Welcome back to Tiny Grimes Games, and I'm here with another Star Wars Destiny video. And today, I want to talk about a new cool product, Zenbin's Destiny. And the reason that I want to talk about it today is that it's on Kickstarter. It's just about over. For 15 bucks, you can get 3 of these trays. For 30 bucks, you can get 8 trays. Now, let's go into the product, and that right there to me is the main reason that this is such a good deal. It's the most efficient and affordable way that I've seen for storing or transporting your Star Wars Destiny stuff. So for 30 bucks, you get 8 of these trays. Let's take a look at one of these trays. We have one here on the left. It stores 18 dice, which is a ton, and 2 decks. So that means theoretically with 8 trays, you could store 16 decks and their dice for 30 bucks. I dare you to find a better deal than that. I have a deck box I love, but guess what? That costs 30 bucks. It holds 2 decks and the dice for them. Now that's sufficient for me right now. I'm generally only bringing 2 decks to a tournament setting. But you know what? When I go to game night, I want to have about 8 decks. And it's a real pain for me because I'll have the decks in one container. I just have all my extra dice in one other really flimsy container that I'm worried about every time I open it. And so it's not an ideal setup for me. Something like this I think is a lot more transportable. You can take 8 of these. Here's a stack of 3 that I have. You stack up 8. It still fits in your bag pretty well. You have 16 decks all ready to go. If I tried to put 8 copies of my deck box in a bag, it would weigh a lot, and it would take up a lot of space. It would just not be a tenable situation. So it's great both for transporting and then also for storage. If you look down here at the bottom one, they have special trays that are just for dice, basically just for storing your sets. So it's a really nice way to have a way to be able to see a whole bunch of dice at once. You can quickly pop them apart if you want to see all the trays next to each other. And it's very solid. I know that's going to be hard to believe. To me, the biggest downside of this product seemed to be the flimsiness of it, right? I even wrote to the maker of Zenbin's Destiny. I said, hey, man, these things look real flimsy. If they're not, you need to prove that, right? And so if you look, there's a video now on there of him putting a 30-pound weight on it to show you how flimsy it is not. I've actually taken mine. I've demonstrated this several times. This is like the 5th time I've done this, so hopefully it won't break this time. But I bashed it on the table. You know, looks the same. It's not dented up. It's very resilient. Dropping it again. Top doesn't pop off. Nothing happens. Everything seems to be golden. So it is not flimsy. That is not a downside of it. One of the other cool things is when you pop the top off here, which I'll do now. Okay, it's got this covering it, this shield for your dice. And what you can do is you pull it out, and I'll just show you. I've got my dice here. I've got my deck here, and I can stick this shield on top to cover my dice. It's very nice. Actually, it goes the other way. The only issue with it, with the shield, is that there's not a latch on the back, so you have to hold it up, and you have to be careful to hold it in place. You know, you put one thumb behind it, and that's fine. For the price, you can't expect it to have like some neat, fancy latch that's going to drive the price up. I will say, while I said you can hold 2 decks in here, there is a problem, and that is that if you look carefully, I have my Jango Veers dice up here. Not Jango Veers, just a Jango deck. And then I also want to have my Kylo Dooku dice and deck. But you can see it's not enough, right? It's just not enough to have 2 different, distinct pools of dice and 2 decks. So I think the way you handle this is you do something like, all right, this tray is my blue villain tray. I've got my Kylo Dooku deck, and I have my Vader Raider deck. And they're both in this tray. And so all the dice, it's enough to have 18 dice for these 2 decks. And then I have another tray, and that's my range damage decks, right? Maybe that's your Akbar hired gun decks plus your Jango decks where they're all using a lot of the same guns and weapons that are overlapping. And I think if you build your trays that way, it works very well. But don't think that you're going to be able to have 2 entirely distinct decks in one tray. You're going to need 2 trays if you want to go that route. Okay, so quick recap of the positives. Very cost effective, great weight of storage, doesn't take up a lot of space, and they are not flimsy. They're actually way more secure than what I store my extra dice in. I have to have a special heavy-duty rubber band that I have around this thing. I've seen people drop them, and it breaks open, and thousands of dice are everywhere. It's terrifying. Every time I get on my bag, I'm like, please don't be the moment someone bumps this and knocks it off the table. My dice are everywhere. When you have a setup like this, the dice aren't going anywhere, so that's great. The cons of it are sort of interesting. The main con is it looks kind of lame. I mean, I shouldn't say lame, but it doesn't look really cool and stunning, right? Like, some people make these amazing deck boxes for like $50. You can store one deck in them, and they have an etching of Han on the top, and they look bananas good. People pull them out of their bag, and you go, oh, that looks so amazing. So if that's what you want, is to hold one deck for $50, this is definitely not what you want, right? This does not satisfy that. It doesn't have the cool factor. It's more of an affordable, efficient method rather than an amazing looking method. The other potential downside that I found when I was trying to use them is that they're big. Because they're holding two decks and all the dice lengthwise, I found that I was not able to put it out in front of me lengthwise like this. I found myself having to turn it during games, which is fine. It's just that the dice now, the shield, you have to lift it a little differently. And by the way, that's probably why it's not on a hinge, because you have to be able to lift it sideways. And you just put it off to the side. If you're not in a tournament, you have plenty of room. You can just put it next to you the other way and be able to access it a little bit easier. So it's actually fine. It's just I wanted to point out that it is pretty big. If you see my playmat here, I mean, it's basically the whole length of a playmat, which is fine. I was actually worried it was longer than the playmat. That's why I got it out. I was like, oh no, is it longer? As long as it's not longer, you're fine, because then it doesn't encroach on your opponent's territory. Don't encroach on your opponent's territory. Okay, so basically, I think it should work really well for a tournament. The bottom line is, if you're looking for a sturdy, efficient, affordable method for transporting and storing your dice, this is actually really good. If you're looking for a really cool way to transport a deck or maybe two decks, then this might not be what you're looking for. But I think for a lot of people out there, especially for storing their collection as we go on, especially you have, the dice you're not using from Awakenings, and you don't just want to chuck them in a big box like I have. I have a junk box. It's full of BB-8s and Immobilize and Raise Staff. I wouldn't mind just having a dice tray instead. It takes up a lot less space, and I could be able to actually see them all instead of having to sort through the box every time I want to see anything. So, bottom line, I think this is a high-quality product. If you want to go out and get it, your time is limited. Do it now. It's on Kickstarter. It's a good deal, and hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time on Tiny Grams Games.